Hello and welcome to the tutorial for MACH Color software for use with your Mach 9 or Mach 7 printer. Today we'll be using the software with our Mach 7 full color inkjet envelope printer. You can start the MACH Color software by double clicking the icon. If this is the first time you're setting up and using the software and you need to configure it to work with your Mach 7, please refer to our tutorial on setting up your printer with MACH Color software. Once the software is loaded, you will notice that you have your source files on the left and your ability to upload files here. On the right-hand side, you have your output configurations. Output configurations are essentially your predefined settings for how the printer will respond to a given file. Open up one of our sample files here, and that we have preloaded, and you can see I can choose the different output configurations from the drop-down menu. I can also make new output configurations if I would like to do so. But once I choose a file, that output configuration is connected to that file in this instance. Any changes that we make here will not affect your overall default output configurations. You can see those here. If you click on the settings icon up in the top right, your output configuration tab will show you your output configurations that you have. This is essentially what your settings are going to be for your printer, what print quality you're going to be using. In this case, we're using production quality, which is high speed and 300 dpi. And then what paper profiles we're using. In this case, we're using our MACH Fabulous color output profile. This is where you can make changes to the actual output configuration if you want to make the default settings different for your system. So if you wanted to have certain offsets for a particular output configuration, you can do all that here. You can also make changes to the color channels. Any changes that you make to the output configurations from this settings tab will stay permanent for any file that you open with that output configuration. The difference is when you open a file or choose a file and connect it to that output configuration, and again, I'm going to choose any one of the other ones here. Let's use best mode here. Any changes that I make in this panel to the offsets or rotation or anything else, any of the ink configurations, this will only affect how this file is with this output configuration while I'm using it. Okay, if I go back to the other file, you'll see that whatever changes I make here will stay with this file, but it does not change my defaults. Again, that's the only way to change defaults under output configurations would be to use this setting here. And all of these settings are going to stay default. So in general, you shouldn't make any changes to the output settings from this panel. If you want to make any changes to these for your defaults when you import a new file, what you can do is make a copy. So let's say I wanted to have a new version of my production non-bleed setting, which I'm going to use for files that don't have to bleed off of the edge. I can make a copy of that output setting. I'm now going to say I will have this one as my Mach 7 copy 2. Now when I save that, this is my output configuration. If I wanted to save a different paper profile for this one, I could do that. The head parameters just show you the actual width of the print head, so you don't have to worry about anything there. The output quality is going to stay 300 dpi. You can change that here if you wanted to, but again, if you change this, it will change the output configuration to best mode at 600 dpi or production mode at 300 dpi. We do not use the 150 dpi setting, although it is there. So production mode, you're always going to want to use that as 300 dpi. You can make other changes here if you wanted to make default changes to offsets or positions or rotation. Again, you can make all of these and save them as an alternative output configuration. We always recommend that you make any changes that you want, but leave the default configurations the way that they are. So if I go back to the file, and you'll notice if I choose my output configuration that we had, it's going to keep those settings for this file. If I choose a different file and I have that same output configuration, as you can see, Mach 7 best here, non-bleed, those settings don't transfer. It is only for that particular file. So consider this like a workflow. When you have your file set up here on the left, any changes that you make on the right-hand side will stay with that file. Now, as a preview and live view, this is the preview of your artwork file. Live view is actually what it's going to look like on the output. It's an estimation based on your paper profile and your ink levels. So if I actually drop this down more, you'll see it will reduce what the output looks like. If I wanted to see how much adding in more cyan, what that would look like, it will do this on a live preview. Now, if I wanted to go back and say, hey, I'm going to go back to defaults, I don't want to keep these changes, that's what this little arrow is up here. And that will reset everything back to your original output configuration settings for that file. Again, I can navigate here on the side and choose whatever files I want. If I wanted to delete a file, all I have to do is click the delete function. It'll give you a few seconds to undo it if you want, but then that file will be gone. You can always add it back in as well. So let's start from scratch. I'm going to import a new file. So I'm going to upload from my browser here. I'm going to upload a file from my computer to the RIP. Choose this file here and open it up. Now I'm choosing a vector-based file for a good reason, and I will explain that in a second. So I'm going to select that file, and now here we can see our output file, and we're going to use this in production mode, non-bleed, because that's what the file is designed for. If I wanted to make any changes here, shift the image over, I can do that. By the way, if I'm going to nudge the file, obviously, if I don't want to do 10 millimeter nudges, I can also change that value. And you just do that by clicking on it and then typing a new value. And now I can do a 1 millimeter shift. You can also switch it to inches, but I find that millimeters is nice and easy to get a fine enough adjustment, but we'll make a quick move for you. If you wanted to shift the artwork all the way to the right, you can do that here. Shift it all the way to the left as well. The top portion of the preview window is going to show you the print width that's available to you. So you can see in this envelope here that we're printing in landscape mode. This is a 9.5 inch envelope. We still have a couple of inches of leftover space because we have an 11.7 inch wide print head. That also helps you to understand if you're running in portrait mode, how much of the print area or how much of the print head you were using. So again, this top section is always going to show the print head top of form. That also makes it a little easier to understand that if you're shifting your envelope up, that's going to start printing a little earlier. And if I'm going to shift it down, it's going to start printing a little bit later. So this is going to be your top of form up here. Now I'm going to set that back to 0. And I'm going to shift my Y offset over a little bit because the printer by default is set up with a little bit of a bleed area. So the envelope itself is going to be inside that print head zone. So this is set up for printing bleed envelopes, of course. We want to be able to be inside that print area. So it gives you a little bit of extra space on that side. So the envelope is actually shifted over inside that area. If I wanted to move it left or right along the print head, this is where I make the adjustment. You can also rotate 90 degrees, 180 degrees. Rotate the image as well. And then this allows you to make the file a little bit larger or a little bit smaller. Now, if I had a bleed file, an artwork that was full bleed, that would be a little bit more helpful. Let's say your customer provides you with an artwork file that is the exact size of a number 10 envelope. Well, that doesn't really give you enough area to bleed outside of that. So you can actually increase your artwork by 1% or decrease it by 1%. And that's what this will do. Now, again, that's not something you really want to play with unless you have to. It's always better to have the artwork created with the proper amount of bleed inside of it. So make sure you do tell your customers, hey, if you want to do full bleed, make sure you build in at least a 16th or an 1/8 of an inch of bleed all the way around the edge of the material. We need a few millimeters of bleed. You don't need a 1/4 inch or anything like that, but you want to allow for enough overspray so we can get off of the page that you are printing on. If I wanted to expand the artwork to the full width of the printer, I can do that, or minimize it back to its original size. That's what these little buttons down here do. Now, ink levels, as I said before, I can adjust all of my ink at one time and just say I wanted to reduce the amount of ink I'm using. I can do that here. If I just wanted to maybe print with less ink on the page, or with a particular artwork that was oversaturated, or if I just wanted to save money on ink, I can make those adjustments here. I can also do individual channels as well. Now, again, remember, if I want to see kind of what that's going to look like, I can click on the live view and make those adjustments here. And that will show you approximately what it's going to look like. Again, these are all just estimates. I'm going to go ahead and reset this one. I messed with all those changes. One of the other changes you can make too is to the output intent. This one is something that usually we'll use if your artwork comes from the customer and you can't modify it or don't have the ability to modify it. You can use some of these functions to try to make that output a little bit more pleasing to what you're looking to achieve with it. So you can boost the saturation, you can follow the source, you can go to the perceptual output as well. So you have a couple of different choices. What I would recommend if you wanted to change these is if you wanted to change the output, play with the different settings, print one out in the different modes, and then you can see what effect that you're going for. Rest of the settings we don't want you to touch, so don't play with the print mode or the workflow type or any of the other things. Okay. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change this offset, move that over a little bit. Now I am going to send one of these to the printer. Okay, so there's our output. Again, if I wanted to shift this over a little bit more, I could. If I wanted to make any adjustments to the positioning or the scale of the piece, I can do that right here. So again, this is a vector art file. There's a nice close-up shot of how that output quality looks in production mode. Really good. That's why people love the Mach 7. But let's say I wanted to make an adjustment to one of these colors here. That is one of the main functions of MACH Color. So while I'm in my preview window here, I'm going to stick with my production mode. That's the output we're going to work with. And I'm going to go and select the Quick Color tab. So when I'm on the file, selecting the Quick Color tab will choose that file automatically. Again, you're going to see the output here, and it's going to show you the entire print width of the piece that's available, which is that 11.7 inches. Now, if I wanted to zoom in, I can do that here to get up and close with the artwork. Let's say I wanted to replace this color here. I can select that color. It's going to now show me the values of that color on the side here. This will show you the values on the right. This will give you the RGB values and the CYMK values, as well as the labs. It does not give you the Pantone colors because Pantone is a trademark of Pantone Corporation. Go ahead and select next. Now this is going to show you what the file swatch choices you have to work with. The default size is around the size of a number 10 envelope. If you're going to use something else, something different, you can use a larger file. If you're going to do 9 by 12 or something else, 8.5 by 11, you can change these values. Again, they're in millimeters, just easy enough to convert to inches, and the default size is going to be this number 10 envelope. It's going to give you a range of colors that you can choose from. You can sort the swatches into a range of color, or you can leave them randomized. This helps you pick colors out a little bit differently. The stretch patch will automatically increase the size of the swatch to fill up the sheet. Now, the other thing you may want to do is have more colors. So you can increase your rows and your columns. And then I can make my swatches a little bit smaller, and what they're called patches here. Make sure they all fit on the page. Now I have even more colors to choose from. Now, if I wanted to drastically change the color, I can increase the radius. And the more I increase the radius, the wider the color choices will become. So if I'm going to go really, if I want to really change the color, I can really increase the radius a lot. That'll give me many more choices to choose. I'm going to go ahead and print this swatch sheet out because while it's nice to look at them on the screen, what matters is the output that I'm looking for on the printer. So when I hit print, it's going to go ahead and print that swatch on the actual material, because that's really the only way that you can. Here's my output file, output. You can see what it looks like on your media, and then I can choose from there. So let's say I want to make a pretty drastic change here. I'm going to go with something like this color here. That's the swatch that I want to select. We go back to the software, and if I wanted to increase the values or come up with more colors, I could do that here. Or if I want to go to the next step, I'm going to select the swatch color that is the one that I want to replace that color with. Now go to next, and it will make that color replacement. And you can see that will show up here. Now I can refine it further if I want. So first thing I'm going to do is print that out. Okay. Now I have my modified file. See, here's my original one to compare to. I don't know that I like that more, but it's good to demonstrate the color difference that we're going for. So you can see we changed that green to that maroon color. If I wanted to refine that more, I can go back and print out another swatch. I can reduce the radius now from the new color that we have. And that will let me dial in that particular color. If I wanted to, again, have more range, I could just increase that radius again, and it will give me more choices. So I'm going to go ahead and print out another swatch sheet. And let's say I'm going to take a more colorful choice, and I'm going to pick this color here. I'm going to go back to my software, choose next, and now I'm going to pick that color. I think I said this one. All right, now I go to next, and I can print that file out one more time to make sure it's the color that I want to achieve. Okay, and there's our new adjusted output. Now that I kind of like that better. So again, this was our original. This was the second one we did. And then finally, our last version, and that's the one we're going to go with. Okay. Now, if I wanted to make other changes to this file, I can as well. But in this case, I'm going to accept that, and we're going to make this as our final choice. Now, before we move on to the next step, I need to apply this setting. Now, there are a couple of different ways to do this. One is we can do it with the PDF and the output configuration. The other choice is to the output configuration itself, or to make a new copy of the output configuration, and the color choice will stay with that copied output configuration. So if you remember in the beginning when I was telling you about the settings for the output configurations, you don't want to change the default output configurations. You can do that here. If you wanted to make this change universal and keep it with the output configuration you're working with, again, in this case, we were working with that production non-bleed output configuration. This color change will stay attached with this output configuration, and it will make that change every single time that color shows up with that output configuration. Not necessarily the ideal way to do it if that's not something that you want to happen with other pieces. So typically, we will keep the output configuration tied to the PDF, the color change. We will keep that change to the output configuration plus the PDF, or make a new copy of the output configuration with that color change. That way, you're not unnecessarily processing color changes with an output configuration that you don't want to use. So again, I'm going to choose choice number one, and that's the one that we recommend using when you're doing color changes. I'm going to hit apply. Now you'll see down here, it tells you the color transform is applied. Now if I go back to quick color or quick rip, you can see here's our artwork, and then the live view shows the color change right there. All right. And all of our other settings are the default. I'm going to nudge this over one little more step. I want to shift it a touch. And I can go ahead and print out 100 copies, 1,000 copies, whatever I want to do from here. Or if it was a variable page job, again, I can do that and print that job. It'll make that change for each page in the file. If I wanted to see that color transformation, I can click on Quick Color, and you'll see that that is tied to the output configuration with the PDF. Here's our original color and then our destination color. Now that will stay tied together with this file and that output configuration. If I want to delete it, I can just click the little trash can and that color transformation will go away. Now I'm going to switch over to full bleed, and you can see that that color transformation is not tied in with any other profile. If I look at preview versus live view, look really similar. I go back to the original one where we have the color transformation applied, and you can see that that is indeed the applied color change. Now, if I wanted to print 10 or 100 or 1,000, I can do that here. And I'm ready to go ahead and I can do that here, and I'm ready to print my job. I can send that to the printer, or I can send it to the job library on the printer and store it for later reprinting. Again, it's always good to do a reprint test before you send 1,000 records over, but this will be where you would do that. So when I click on send to print, it will generate an output file for that. If I wanted to just regenerate the output file, that's what this button will do. It will regenerate the files and keep that stored in the software, but it won't send it to the printer. I can then click send to printer. Just going to print back one again for now, and that will send one record to the printer. Okay. I like my output. Everything's the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and Turn on my conveyor, and now I'm going to run a bunch of envelopes. Go back to our software, and let's say I wanted to print 500 of these. I can go ahead and send that to the printer now. We'll see down here, it tells you the status, sent to the printer, successfully printed. And our output will start coming out. Then I have my modified color replacements done, and I can go from there. Okay, so there's another method that you can do to replace colors. And instead of using the swatch method, it's called the replace method. That's what this button up here does. So first thing we're going to do is identify the color we want to replace. In this case, I'm going to pick this purple in the back here. And then I'm going to click the replace button. So now you get to see, here's our active color. This is what we've chosen. And this is what the colors are based on the selection. So when we go to the next step, instead of a swatch sheet to pick the color, you can see the colors disappeared here. We can actually type in the value. So if we know that we want to replace it with a totally different color, or we have a specific color value that we know that we want to move to, we can do that here. We can also choose the lab values and enter those values here. So if I knew that what my numbers were going to be, let's say it was 210 in the cyan, and hit enter, you will see the color starts to appear there. If I want to add some more magenta, I can do that as well. And adding in other colors. So if I want to add in yellow and black, I can do that. Remember to hit enter every time. You can see that the color will correspond to the values that we punch in here. So this is a way that you can tweak a color individually. Let's say you select the value, you know what the values are from the previous step, right? The color that we selected shows you that it was 137, 181, 1, and 5. If we wanted to just increase the magenta in this particular color or increase the yellow individually instead of going through the swatch method, we can do that here. So we go ahead and we say, all right, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to have 140 for that. I'm going to increase my yellow. Sorry, my magenta. I'm going to increase my magenta a little bit. And then I'm going to increase my yellow a lot. I want to bring in a lot more yellow to this color. I can do that. And then if I want to make it a little darker, I can add black as well. And now I can go to the next step and print out my output. And as you can see, our color has been changed. If I wanted to lighten that up or change it even further, I can do that. If I want to adjust that further, I can do that as well and hit refine. And that takes me back to the color entry stage. So these are the defaults from the color I selected. I go here, these are the values that I replaced it with. Maybe if I don't want as much black, I can replace that, set that back to 0. And maybe I'm going to get rid of my cyan here. And then replace my yellow, even more yellow. And back off my magenta. Then process that again and send another one to print. Now you can see my output has changed again, and I've replaced that color that was originally purple. We went to the green coloration, and then I adjusted it again to yellow. See there. And the rest of the process is the same. I can apply it to the PDF in the output configuration or create a copy of the output configuration and apply that color transformation. Now it says my color transformation has been applied, and I can see that change here. It's my original color. There's my replacement color. So it gives you another option on how to replace a particular color in your vector artwork. I wanted to just send this file over to the job library, I can do that as well. And send that over to the job library. And again, you'll see it says down at the bottom, sent out data to the job library and successfully processed that record. Now if I go over to my stored jobs, see that those files are in here. I can sort them by name, or I can sort them by the date they were added. So as you can see, there's our file right there. And if I want to reprint that from here, I can do that. I can change the number of copies, etc. And that is now stored in my job library. Okay, that is our overview of color changes with the MACH Color software. Now, if I wanted to go in, as I said, and get rid of that color transformation, I can come here, click Overview, and then delete that color transformation and tell you it's been deleted successfully. Back to my quick rip, and let's pull up a different file. I'm going to take something that was full bleed. File shows up down here. We can select it. And that's our famous Bora Bora fish picture. So this is included in our sample pack, so you can see that this is how the file will look when you preview it. Click on the live view, and that'll give you a better idea of what the output will look like when you send it through from the printer. Now, this type of a file is not something you would necessarily want to use to make color changes. You still can. Let's say if I wanted to change the color on the eye in Quadient, I can do that, right? I can zoom in and say, hey, I'm going to really change this color here. I can go ahead and make that change, but not necessarily ideal for color management or color replacement. And when you're using artwork that is like this. Again, it still can be done, but not necessarily the intent of how you're going to use the software. In a case like that, you probably would want to go back into the original software that you were using and make those changes to the artwork before you create it. And now I can go ahead and print one out. So this is going to come in to whatever the default settings are for that output configuration. But in this case, I'm going to choose full bleed because that's how the artwork is designed. And I'm going to go ahead and print one out and see what that looks like. Okay, it looks pretty good, but I've got a little bit of white space over here. So what I'm going to do is shift the artwork over a touch more. So I'm going to shift my artwork over just a little bit. I'll do 2 millimeters start and then do another test print, see how that looks. And you can see that's the output that I'm looking for. Nice bleed off of all 4 sides. Now, that's a good case where if you get a little piece that may be a little bit tougher, has more skew to it, you would need a little bit more bleed area for something like that. But again, the registration section of the Mach 7 is really tight and does a nice job with these kind of applications. If I wanted to make some other adjustments, I could change the paper profile. Let's say I wanted to try a different paper profile with this artwork. Do that right here and say I'm going to go with a standard envelope production mode and send one of those to the printer. My second output, I can compare the two and say, now, you know what? This one looks a little bit darker blue. Maybe I want something like this, but this is more what the customer is looking for. They want something a little bit darker where the color contrast shows more. Then for this artwork, I'm going to choose that paper profile. So you have the ability to do that within the software. Again, the default paper profile for production is going to be Mach Fabulous, and you have a couple of different choices you can choose. Then if you wanted to print in best mode, the other options would be a single paper profile called Mach 7 Best. So let's do full bleed best. And you can print in best mode or production mode with full bleed. I'll also show you a variable data file. So if we import a variable data file, particular record has 250 pages in it. You can see when you open up a variable data file, it allows you to toggle through the pages. So you can preview them if you want, and if you wanted to start from a particular page, you could do that as well. I can also print out the current page if I wanted to do a reprint of just one record, or if I wanted to do a range of maybe the first 5 records, I could do that here and then send that to the printer. In this case, choose non-bleed. As you notice, whatever the last profile you had on the right-hand side selected is what the file that you're going to import comes in at. So I was using the full bleed one before. Now I'm going to choose the non-bleed here for this one. So again, if I wanted to do this all the time, these changes will stay there. So if I do pages 1 to 10, it will stay with that output configuration with this file. So the next time I come back to this file, this will also still be here. I go ahead and send those to the printer. Turn on my conveyor. There's records 1 through 10. Let's say I did my print job and there was a jam at some point. I had to go back and reprint record 80. I can actually type in record 80 here, and it will take me right to that record. If I want to verify that that's the one I wanted, maybe it was the one after it. Or I can click through and say, okay, no, it was this one. And I need to reprint records 83 to 85. I can go ahead and do that over here. Send those couple of pieces, reprint them. Records 83, 84, and 85. If I wanted to change that or leave those settings again, remember if I come back to this file, it's going to be save that last position that we reprinted there. So I can remember to go ahead and change it back to all, or I can delete the file if I'm done with that job so it's not still in my active record files here. I can make the positioning changes. Again, if I wanted to move stuff around, up and down, shift the artwork a little bit over. Let's say I thought it was a little bit high. And again, that will make the change for all of the records in that variable database. I can go to live view as well to preview what that will look like. And if I wanted to do my color change here, again, I can go ahead and do this. Now, this particular record is not a vector image. We always recommend, if you're doing color changes, it makes the most sense to use vectored artwork. That will give you the best result in your color change output. But I'll use this as an example to show you how that would look. I go ahead and now want to replace that color. Let me bring something really wacky here. It's pretty different. I'm going to choose this color so I can choose something that's very different. When I go to next, it will make that replacement. And if I print one of those out, you can see it made that change to the color. But you're going to get a little bit of outline because it's not vector art. So you can expect that if you're doing graphics that are bitmaps like this particular artwork was, you'll see that dithering around the edge. It's not going to change all of those colors. So just be aware of that when you do make your selection, that you can't change all the artwork all the time. Going to leave there without making any color changes. And that represents the functionality that you can get with MACH Color. If I wanted to filter jobs, let's say I had a bunch of jobs here, I can filter them by name. So if I wanted something that only showed up with MACH in the title, it will filter out for that. Or if I was going to do this by customer clients, you could save your files that way. You can also create labels for them or sort in different ways. So if I want to sort by the date they were edited, the date that they were added to the file, the oldest file to the newest file, or by name, I can change that here and then click on those sort functions. So a little more user friendliness on how to find a file once you have more than one record in there. And then if I go to click on the help function, this will take us to the user guide. So there's a user manual built into the software where you can go through and get any questions answered that have been bothering you. Also show under settings that if you have a maintenance contract with the software, which is an additional option, under settings here, it will actually show you an email link and instructions on how to reach out to direct software support. This is where your printer settings are. And again, this should already be set up if you're already printing with your Mach 7. And we have a how-to video on all of that. But you can edit those parameters here if you change your IP address. Then these are your color profiles. You can actually add new color profiles to the software anytime that you want. Let's say you had an additional ICC profile you had created. You want to load that into the software. You can actually do that right here and add them to MACH Color. Now your new choice will be here. And you can go to your output configurations. Again, save that as a copy. If I were going to make a change, I always want to make a copy first. And then I will be able to choose my new output choice from here. Now again, anything I save here in the settings will change all of the defaults for that output configuration for any file that I import. Okay, well, thank you for joining us, and hopefully that will help you understand how to use and get the most out of your MACH Color software. Thanks for being a Quadient customer. We appreciate your business.